I stood by the expansive panoramic window of our Manhattan penthouse, gazing at the shimmering lights near the Brooklyn Bridge. The cool evening breeze carried the faint scent of damp leaves, blending with the distant hum of traffic, a constant backdrop to the millions of lives flowing behind the city's towering glass facades. A glass of chow maro rested in my hand, a small indulgence marking the close of another day. My eyes wandered across the cityscape as I reflected on my life at 37, leading the strategic communications department at a prominent consulting firm. My husband, Mark, 2 years my senior, is a celebrated architect whose name frequently graces the pages of professional journals. Together, we had achieved everything: a prestigious status, financial security, and a luxurious apartment in the heart of the city. We were the quintessential power couple, often admired at cocktail parties, yet something felt amiss. In recent years, our marriage, once fueled by fiery passion, had settled into a predictable rhythm. Don't misunderstand me, we still cared for one another, were kind, intimate, and attentive. Yet, the thrill, that intoxicating spark that once kept us up all night making love on the cold floor of my old apartment, had faded. Our dates had become monotonous: dinner at a familiar restaurant, a taxi home, a glass of wine, and good but uninspired sex. The raw excitement, the unexpected moments, the wild laughter that once defined us were gone. We were comfortable, yes, but I longed for something more, the electric tension that quickens your pulse and takes your breath away. That evening, as I stood gazing at the city lights, a strange email landed in my rarely used personal inbox. The subject line read, "An invitation to a new kind of feeling." The sender's address was a jumble of random letters, and I hesitated, hovering over the delete button, wary of phishing attempts. But curiosity won. The email contained a short message. And quote, "Jane, you are someone who savors life's flavors but may have forgotten some of its subtler hues. We know little about you, but enough to sense you are ready for a new experience. Come tomorrow at 8 p.m. to the address in the attached PDF. It's a private gathering, special people only. The password, Aurora Borealis. No reply is necessary. You will either come or not. The choice is yours." End quote. Attached was a PDF with an address, a historic townhouse tucked between modern towers on the Upper East Side. The words Aurora Borealis stirred something within me. I considered deleting the email but couldn't. A part of me, weary of predictability, was intrigued. At dinner that night, I showed Mark the message. He set down his fork, frowning slightly. "Strange," he murmured. "Maybe an art event or an exclusive club." After a pause, he asked quietly, "Do you want to go?" Brushing my hair aside, I shrugged and tried to sound casual. "We've talked about shaking things up, right? Maybe it's nothing, or maybe it'll be interesting." The next evening, at exactly 8 p.m., we stood before a grand door of dark wood, adorned with intricate carvings and a bronze handle. Mark softly spoke the password, Aurora Borealis, and the door opened silently, as if anticipating us. Inside, a warm, ambient glow from lamps and candles reflected off antique mirrors. Well-dressed, poised guests conversed in hushed tones over glasses of champagne. Nothing was shocking or grotesque, yet the air was charged with a subtle, sensuous tension, as though everyone shared a secret. A tall, impeccably dressed man in his 40s with a neat beard approached us. "I'm Alexander, your chair of sensations," he said in a low, welcoming tone. "This is a community of individuals seeking to explore broader horizons of the senses. We impose nothing. Everything is consensual. We are not swingers, a brothel, or a circus of absurdities. We are explorers, of passion, aesthetics, the mind, and the body. Please, enjoy some champagne." Mark took my hand, his palm slightly damp with nerves, and we stepped into the lounge. I sipped my champagne, scanning the room. The guests were refined, elegantly dressed, their conversations calm yet charged with anticipation. The air was perfumed with incense, accompanied by the soft strains of jazz. Seated on a velvet sofa near a small fireplace, I observed the crowd, a blonde woman in an emerald gown in deep conversation, a poised woman in a black lace kimono listening intently, sparks of connection visible between her and her partner. A flutter of excitement stirred in my stomach. Soon, a couple approached us. Marissa, an art curator from a renowned Chelsea gallery, and Edward, a respected plastic surgeon, introduced themselves, marking the start of an evening that promised to redefine the ordinary. The surgeon introduced himself with ease, engaging us in a conversation about the nature of human desire and the contrast between routine intimacy and something more adventurous. Their words were respectful yet hinted at experiences that extended beyond the mundane. Marissa smiled warmly and said, "We all appreciate quality and aesthetics here. Some come for light flirtation, others for roleplay, or even deeper exploration. Consent is key. If you prefer to simply observe, that's perfectly fine. If you want more, no one will stop you." I noticed Mark listening closely, his expression thoughtful. Though our marriage was successful, it had lost the element of discovery. Perhaps this was the spark we had unknowingly been seeking. I took a sip of champagne, my heart fluttering with a mix of curiosity and anticipation. Marissa and Edward invited us to an upstairs room. The space was dimly lit and intimate, with cushions arranged in a circle around a low table adorned with fruit, cheese, chocolate, and wine. Couples and small groups spoke softly or sat silently, fingers gently intertwined. Across the room, I noticed two people standing close, barely touching, yet their chemistry was palpable. The atmosphere felt calm, consensual, but charged with a subtle, sensual energy. Sensing our hesitation, Marissa smiled reassuringly. "Relax," she said, "take off your jacket or loosen a tie. Everyone here embraces freedom from rigid norms." Soon, another couple, Jeremy and Lauren, joined us, settling on the cushions nearby. They shared that they had visited this place before. "We don't cheat," Lauren explained gently, "but being in an environment free from taboos helps rekindle something between us. Sometimes, it's just a touch, like a hand on an arm, and it reignites our intimacy at home, bringing renewed passion. It's like recharging a battery we didn't realize was running low." Her words resonated with me. They weren't crass or intrusive, but rather painted a vivid picture of exploring boundaries and rediscovering excitement. Marissa leaned closer, her tone soft and inviting. "Would you like to try the sensory room? It's just through there." She gestured toward a nearby door. "There are silk scarves, maybe ice, scented oils. It doesn't have to be overtly sexual, it can simply be a game of sensations." Mark turned to me, his expression curious, silently asking for my input. I swallowed and nodded, my voice steady but nervous. "Let's see." The sensory room was bathed in a warm golden light, with a thickly carpeted floor and inviting pillows scattered around. Soft, rhythmic, wordless music filled the space. A couple near the wall stood motionless, their fingertips just barely grazing one another, as if moving in a slow, silent dance. Another pair knelt on the floor, one trailing a silk scarf along the other's arm, their eyes fluttering shut in pleasure. The atmosphere felt reverent, almost ritualistic, blending intimacy with respect. Marissa handed me a crimson silk scarf and whispered, "Try this. Blindfold Mark. Without his sight, his sense of touch will heighten, making everything feel new." My heart pounded as I approached Mark. "Are you comfortable with this?" I asked softly. He nodded. Slowly, I tied the scarf around his eyes, knotting it gently behind his head. He stood still, unable to see, only able to feel. I let my fingertips trace his neck, across his collarbone, and down his shoulders. It was such a simple act, yet it felt entirely different in this setting. Mark exhaled deeply, and I could sense the shift in his focus as he experienced the sensations more acutely. Lauren approached me, her voice soft and careful. "May I touch your arm?" she asked. "If it's uncomfortable, just say so." I hesitated, a mix of nervousness and curiosity swirling within me. Finally, I said, "Yes." Lauren's fingers brushed lightly along my forearm, her touch gentle and deliberate. Goosebumps rose on my skin, and I was surprised by how pleasant and intriguing it felt. It wasn't about attraction or anything cliché, it was simply an exploration of how my body could respond to new energies and sensations. I glanced at Mark, still blindfolded, his expression calm yet focused, as though he could sense the shift in the room's energy. Lauren withdrew her hand with a kind smile. "All good?" she asked. "Yes," I replied, my voice slightly breathless. And it was good, thrilling, and unexpected. A few moments later, I untied the scarf from Mark's eyes. His gaze met mine, darker with a mix of desire and curiosity. In that instant, I saw my own excitement reflected back at me. In those few minutes, we had crossed an invisible boundary, stepping beyond the confines of our predictable routines and discovering what else was possible. Alexander reappeared, silent and smooth as a shadow. "Adjusting well?" he asked, his voice carrying a hint of knowing amusement. With a faint smile, Alexander asked, "Would you like to go further? We have private rooms for those who prefer privacy, or you're welcome to stay here, soaking in the atmosphere." I turned to Mark, his eyes already asking the question his lips hadn't yet formed. I gave my answer, "Let's have a private room, just the two of us." Alexander led us down a dimly lit corridor to a small, secluded room. Inside, a low table, scattered cushions, and a faint jasmine scent filled the space. He closed the door gently behind us. "No one will disturb you," he said. "Come back when you're ready." Alone now, we stood facing each other, the muffled strains of distant music barely audible. Slowly, I reached for Mark's shirt, resting my palm on his chest. Our eyes locked as I whispered, "We wanted something new, let's embrace it." He nodded, smiling softly. I began unbuttoning my blouse, never breaking eye contact. His fingers grazed my hair, my shoulder, before we leaned in and kissed. This wasn't just a kiss, it was a promise, a decision to move forward with no turning back. My body felt alive, every nerve humming with the memory of silk scarves, Lauren's touch, and the watchful energy of the other room. This wasn't simply foreplay, it was a shift, a reminder that desire could be endlessly reimagined, that the boundaries we once thought fixed were far more fluid. On the cushions, we rediscovered each other. Every touch felt charged, every breath shared between us. We spoke words we hadn't said in years, whispered phrases that had once been ours but had long been forgotten. We gave ourselves to the moment, letting go of routine and expectation. When we finally lay still, breathing together in the quiet, I felt lighter, freer, more connected to him than I had in years. It was as though those years of quiet stability had been preparing us for this awakening, and now we'd tapped into a deeper, more vibrant source of passion. I touched his cheek. "I never thought we could feel this way again," I murmured. He pulled me closer, his voice soft but certain. We just needed a push. Eventually, we dressed and returned to the lounge. On the surface, nothing had changed, yet everything felt different. Marissa, Edward, Lauren, and Jeremy gave us knowing, friendly glances, but no one pried. At the door, Alexander inclined his head slightly. "I hope you found what you were looking for," he said quietly. Stepping out into the Manhattan night, we were greeted by the familiar sounds of traffic, distant sirens, and shimmering lights. But somehow, the city looked new. My hand tightened around Mark's, and we exchanged a smile, genuine, intimate, like co-conspirators who had discovered a secret map. The next morning, I woke up before the alarm, feeling surprisingly light. At work, sorting through emails, I caught myself smiling for no reason. My mind wandered to the hush of that townhouse, the rustle of silk, the delicate perfume of desire in the air. My skin still tingled with the memory, the sensations glowing like distant stars. Mark called me at lunch, his voice carrying a warmth I hadn't heard in years. "How's your day?" he asked. "Wonderful," I replied, grinning. "And yours?" "Great," he said softly. "I've been thinking about us. Let's do something spontaneous tonight. No plans, no reservations." I laughed lightly. "Let's." That evening, we chose a small Japanese restaurant we hadn't visited in years. The flavors seemed more vibrant, more alive than ever before. We laughed, reminiscing about the wild things we used to do when we were younger. For the first time, we realized we weren't too old, too settled, or too busy to recapture that sense of spontaneity. All we needed was to allow ourselves new experiences. Back home, we didn't bother turning on the TV. Instead, we stood on our terrace, watching the city lights shimmer in the cool night air. Leaning into Mark, I felt the breeze on my skin and asked softly, "Can I ask you something?" "Of course," he replied, resting his chin lightly on my hair. "Would you want to do something like that again?" Maybe not the same place, but continue exploring our boundaries? He didn't hesitate. Yes. I loved feeling that spark, that sense of discovery. It reminded me that our passion doesn't have to fade, it can grow, change, and evolve. I smiled, realizing that the idea of boredom had become irrelevant. Love, I now understood, wasn't static. It craved not just comfort, but new horizons and fresh flavors. If we stayed open to possibilities, our desire would never wither, it would transform, deepen, and expand. I didn't know if we'd ever return to that townhouse, but I knew we'd continue finding ways to evolve together. The fear of the unknown had vanished, replaced by a sense of adventure. We had discovered a new rhythm in our relationship, a melody of courage, openness, and the vitality of being truly alive. In my mind, 2 words lingered: Aurora Borealis. Those elusive northern lights, so rare amid the city's glare, had lit up our emotions in vivid, forgotten colors. If I ever sense our flame dimming again, I won't hesitate to step into the unknown. We ventured into uncharted territory and returned transformed, renewed. This was the start of a new chapter in our life together, and I awaited it with joy and anticipation.